Hi, my name is Andrea, and I'm one of the lead interpreters over at beingholyhuman.com. This video is designed as part of our larger Holy Human Experience set of information that's over on the website. However, we really wanted to make it publicly available because so many people right now are talking about, well, how do I start to examine my thoughts and the things that I'm saying and the actions I'm taking and look at that as far as holistically how it's getting me momentum. So that is what this video is designed to do. We hope you enjoy. Welcome to our segment on thoughts, words, and actions, the stories that we spin. I do believe this is my favorite piece. I know I say that every time, and I'm not even supposed to have favorites. But this is one that I feel like a lot of us have gotten stuck with in the past. A lot of the crap that we lead through on a daily basis is based on these stories that probably don't even serve us anymore. So this segment is meant to help you unravel that. As always, we start with questions. So the first one is going to be, how aware are you of the thoughts that flow through your mind? And how many of your thoughts ground and align you? And how many of them take you off your center? Now, right now, maybe you don't even know the answers to those questions. And you'd be in good company. It's actually very challenging to hear your thoughts or know your thoughts or police your thoughts without any experience in it. So if you have not been aware of your own thoughts and specifically working with that in the past, you might not have a good answer to this question, and that is okay. The next question on this list would be, do thoughts turn into things? And if so, how? So in pulling all these things together, I'd like to take us to the question of, why are thoughts, words, and actions such a big deal? And I have several answers to this question. I'll try to keep it concise and keep it focused. But it's been my observation that when we think about, just think of that last question, can thoughts turn into things? I mean, it's probably not very likely that you're thinking of a soda and a soda appears in your hand. Most of us can't do that, at least not yet. However, when we think about this idea of if I'm thinking about it, I'm focusing on it, my creative energy is going toward it. Well, guess what? I'm probably then aligning myself with it pretty darn good. So if we are not consciously thinking our thoughts and knowing our words and aligning that with our actions, wouldn't be surprised if you're bringing a lot of stuff to you that you look at and you think, oh, I didn't think this, I didn't want this. But how do you know if you didn't know? So why are they such a big deal? Because they do have power. They do get you momentum. And let's think about how to get you the best momentum. Now, what do we mean by this? First of all, it's probably smart to just define each of them so we're all speaking the same language. Thoughts are what we might hear ourselves thinking. Now, of course, it's in quotes here because most of us don't literally hear them in full sentences like we would say out. For good reason. This is often referred to as self-talk, and behavioral scientists have measured self-talk at coming in at the rate of 625 words per minute. Giving you some context, the fastest speakers or auctioneers often speak at a rate of 150 to 175 words per minute. So your self-talk is spinning really fast. And that's because it's not in sentences and paragraphs. It's usually some words, some pictures, some vibrations, and it's a jumble of stuff. So our thoughts are what we are thinking, and there's a broad definition of how that looks. And of course, like we mentioned, sometimes there are words in there. So words are words. They're literally what we say. They can be external, and they also can be unverbalized within our thoughts. Now, as we're thinking about our thoughts and our words and how this all comes together, don't forget the idea that over in clarity and density, we had this concept of, clear, smooth, clarity. Usually we would think of this as positive. I can't think of anyone who would say that's not positive, but that's a pretty positive place to be. Where over on the other side of the formula, we have density. Usually when we're really dense, we feel a little bit more sticky, a little bit more heavy, maybe a little more scattered. And a lot of us would consider that a place we don't love to be. So don't forget about the fact that we have this middle ground. And this middle ground is actually really powerful when you're thinking about how you can use words, how you can use thoughts. Because it's not just about taking words or thoughts and I need to make sure they're full of roses and sunshine. No, sometimes that's just simply not realistic. We'll say it that way. And that's okay. We don't have to have super positive thoughts and words so long as we're not having ones that are holding us back. Just coming to neutral can be a really powerful thing for a lot of us to do. As a quick example, I was once driving through the great state of Illinois. I was 10 miles away from the border of Missouri. I was so close to being out of there. And sure enough, I'm speeding and I get pulled over. Now, of course, my thoughts, not so great. And I was actually a little shaken up. I don't know if many of you get that way when, it's a little alarming. You see the lights and you have this experience. So I was still shaken up after the policeman pulled away. And so I knew that if I stayed in that space, in that headspace, I would probably run into even bigger problems. So I went to the next exit. I pulled over at a gas station and I worked through reset, breath, quiet, touch. But more importantly, I started working with what I'm thinking. So when I say more importantly, I had to quiet down my physiology in order to start working with this mental game. So that was my first step, very important first step. And then it enabled me to get to the space where I start to look at what I'm telling myself. And at first it's like, oh no, I have to pay $200. This is going to count against me. My insurance is going to go up. Like, I'm telling myself a lot of stuff that's not very helpful. And it probably is not going to realistically spin into, you know what? The more I think about it, I'm so glad I get to give a donation of $200 to the state of Illinois. I really do think they need the money. No, I'm not going to get to that kind of a positive place. But what I can do, sitting in the parking lot of a gas station in 2 minutes or less, is get to neutral. And that is what I chose to do that day. So as we're thinking about these different pieces, thoughts, words, and the next one here also has to do with actions. Actions are the things we do. And in some cases, they're the things we don't do, because sometimes inaction still can create vibration for us. So as we're looking at this circle, we've about called it a spinner, and you'll see why here in a moment. This all flows together very nicely, right? I mean, our thoughts usually precede what we're saying out loud, and our thoughts have words in them. And what we're thinking and what we're saying typically then does spin into what we do about it. And what's really interesting about that is thoughts have vibration, words have vibration, actions have vibration. So our vibrations are coming out with all these different pieces. So when I said spinner, of course, I have to have props because this just was such a great analogy for me. And it worked so well in my mind, I wanted to be able to show it. And so when we think about thoughts, words, and actions together, I would almost think of them like a spinner like this. So you'll notice here, if I were to blow in this spinner, that was pretty easy for that momentum to go. All of these things are aligned. All of them are relatively the same. And I'm just exerting a little bit of momentum or energy, and boom, it flows pretty easily. So if we think about each of these different pieces representing thoughts, words, and actions, and later we'll also add viewpoints, what if one of these were broken? What if one of these were off? So I have a different example here. This is a spinner that, oh no, this little leg is off. So when I add the momentum, it'll go, but it's harder to make it go. And you notice it gets stuck along the way. And so I have to keep putting in work and then trying again, stuck again. So as we think about that as an analogy, what if my words and my actions are great, but I'm actually behind the scenes not thinking such a great thought? So my thoughts aren't great. Like, I don't think this is ever going to work. This is kind of stupid, but whatever. But outside, I'm like, sounds great. Let's try it. And I go along with it. I do it. That's one of my actions. I wouldn't be surprised if I have that lack of momentum. And really interesting other piece about this, authenticity is such a hot topic. And we think about what makes a person come across as authentic. One of the answers is all of these vibrations match. When we're thinking something and saying something else, or we're thinking and saying something but not actually doing it, that is subconsciously perceived as inauthentic. So when we think about why does this matter? Why does it matter that they all go together? Well, there's several reasons. So again, I just want to show this a little bit bigger. Our thoughts typically contain words, but our thoughts precede what we're saying to people about it, and we're saying out loud to ourselves. It precedes what we're doing. And maybe this is all happening really, really fast together, but still it kind of flows in this way. And it's all creating vibration along the way. So when we talk about vibration, I'd like to give you an example of that. Perhaps I'm introducing you to this, or perhaps I'm reminding you of it. It's Emoto's work. So if you've seen the work of Emoto and his team, that's just really interesting stuff they did with putting words, for the most part words, on water. Now, in doing so, they would take water from the same source and put it in the same conditions, but the difference would be that they would say mean things to the water, maybe write it out and tape it to the water, or they'd say it over and over to the water. And they also, in the same, if we have two containers in the same conditions, say nice things. And then what they do is freeze the water and look at it under high definition photography or microscope. And in looking at that over and over again, the nasty messages looked messy and scattered, disharmonious. The nice ones formed beautiful pictures. So to me, it's fascinating to see this. Now, of course, if I just activated your scientific mind and you're like, well, tell me about the test conditions and the temperature, we could certainly dig into the research behind it, but just think about it and just let's look at the surface level of this. That is amazing that over and over again, messages that were perceived as negative started to look like this, and messages that are perceived as positive would look like that. That can be true going back over here to the words like they were using. Thoughts, actions. So all of those things are creating a picture. It's creating a vibration that if we could literally freeze it in time like he did with this water, what would that picture look like? And to me, that's a fascinating question that I have to ask myself. What would my thoughts freeze and look like? So the question of why do thoughts, words, and actions and their vibrations matter? Well, several answers, but as you might have noticed here, if I can change the vibration of one of them, or if I'm thinking about as a whole, now I have them all matching, changing the vibration changes everything. Also, when they all go together, when they match, they create some really great momentum. So regardless, momentum is created. But when we think about how it all goes together, what if one of them doesn't quite work? You notice, like with my spinner, the momentum was stopped. So just the whole dynamic of momentum and how that all can flow when they're aligned, that's really powerful information to me. As we mentioned back with words, vibrations that go together typically feel authentic. So other people might perceive you as more authentic, and to me, something just as important is I might feel more authentic on the inside. I feel like I'm more of my true soul personality instead of operating from some sort of persona that wants to pretend something is a certain way. So when our vibrations go together, it feels like this very authentic experience. When we think about harnessing the power of our thoughts, words, and actions, I get the question a lot. Well, how do I do that? Okay, first step, I guess, is to start listening. Yes. And then start choosing. I think the formula is pretty simple. It starts with the idea of look at how you feel. Listen to how you feel. If you recall back to our recognize, reconcile, and resolve. If I'm using how I feel, oh no, I'm not feeling so great. That helps me recognize. It's one of the things I love about how all these pieces work together. I don't have to put in a lot of work. If I feel crappy, guess what? I just gotta poke. You need to recognize this. And then it's my job to start to reconcile. Okay, well, what happened? How did this start happening? And one of my primary reconcile tools is here with thoughts, words, and actions. I will question my thoughts, question my words, and question my actions. And of course, with that, think about what kind of vibration it's creating. So what I want to do is choose either neutral, or if it's realistic, positive also is very helpful. So I'm going to choose positive or neutral thoughts, words, and actions. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is that other little V that's part of the formula, and it's the idea of viewpoints. If you notice that your thoughts, words, and actions, you feel like they're aligned, you feel like they're neutral, or you feel like they're positive, this is the best you can do right now. Now what? That's where we start to look at, how is it that I'm seeing this? So that's what we mean by viewpoint. When I'm thinking about viewpoint, I've got to ask myself, is there another way that I can see this? So you'll notice we've added viewpoint here to the top of the formula, because how I see something now starts the waterfall of what I'm thinking about it, what I'm saying about it, what I'm doing about it. And you'll notice it'll just kind of spin all right back into the same stuff. So as you're thinking about your viewpoint, just as an example here, I mean, it's amazing to me how two people might go to the exact same meeting and they both walk out with a completely different takeaway and a different attitude toward it. One might be angry about what the speaker said, and the other one might be feeling really energized. Well, why? Why did that happen? Probably because they each saw it a different way. It ran against their filters of what they believe a different way, and therefore they had a different experience. So as you're thinking about, okay, well, how do I make my thoughts, words, and actions as powerful for me as possible? Another thing I need to start doing is digging back one more layer and looking at the viewpoint underneath it. Now, why did I say this to last? Part of the reason for that is I have seriously worked with like hundreds of people within corporate audiences where we just talk about, well, really just thoughts and words. And sure, we talk about how it then creates actions. However, how can you start to modify your thoughts and words? And I've seen huge shifts from that. But for me personally, I've noticed that my biggest gains come from not just when I'm checking my thoughts and my words, but I'm also thinking about, well, where did I get that? What do I believe about that? Is that what I want to believe about that? Is that what's helpful to believe about that? And I really check all those different pieces. So at this point, you might be wondering, what can someone do to get their viewpoints, thoughts, words, and actions and vibrations to work with them instead of against them? First off, use how you feel. So you're going to recognize by how you feel. And then, like we mentioned earlier, it's you dealing with the mental story isn't going to work for you very well unless your physiology is routed properly. So you're going to start with your RBQT, 18 inches, and then you can start to ask yourself intervention questions. What am I telling myself? Is this really true? How else can I see it? What do I optimally want out of this? And don't forget, use present tense now language, and then also as positive as possible language. And once you've identified, all right, well, this is what I actually want out of this, you can start to think about, well, what do I need to tell myself to get there? And you can always choose. Just choose a new viewpoint. Choose new thoughts. Choose new words. Choose new actions. There are several choice points along the way here. I hope this video has helped you think about how to unravel your own thoughts, words, and actions, viewpoints, and vibrations. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one. I'm back. How did it go? Did you question some of your thoughts? Maybe look at how it's creating momentum with those words and actions? Think about the vibration of all of it? If you're interested in more information, by all means, check us out over at beingwholyhuman.com. But we also just highly encourage you to follow us here. Check us out over on TikTok, and we look forward to seeing you soon.